The quiet collapse before power appears always arrives in the way that confuses you the most. There is no roar, no warning, no clear sign that you are stepping into the most important phase of your life. It does not look like the dramatic images you often see in movies. Instead, real power begins in a moment so small you think it is just a bad day. One morning you wake up and realize your body feels heavy like lead, not because you are exhausted, but because deep inside you know the old self is beginning to crack. A simple sentence from someone suddenly cuts into you like a blade, not because they are sharp, but because your old defenses can no longer hold their shape. You walk through familiar scenes, but everything feels slightly off, slightly blurred, slightly slower by one beat. It is not the world that is changing. It is you who are changing at a depth your mind has not yet recognized. The quiet collapse always appears before a new power is born because the old self cannot hold the frequency you are about to enter. When you feel you no longer fit into the life around you, when you feel pushed out of spaces that once felt familiar, when words that once scared you lose their weight, that is the signal that the field is beginning to restructure you. No collapse arrives to break you. All of it comes to open a crack for a higher layer of awareness to pass through. What makes most people panic is the silence of this phase. The body slows down. The inner world feels tired. Thoughts become scattered. You do not feel motivation, and you no longer feel excitement for things that once made you happy. This is not weakness. This is dismantling. An old system is stopping, so it will no longer pull you into old orbits. You think you are losing strength, but you are only losing weights that no longer match your new frequency. When the old identity begins to crack, you will find yourself more sensitive, more able to touch your own fragility. But this fragility is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that the core of your energy is being exposed to be rebuilt. A tree cannot grow a new trunk if the old bark does not break. Humans are the same. Each time you touch confusion, disorientation, or fatigue, you are standing close to a new layer of power. The quiet collapse is always a disguised gift. It takes away the things you cling to that no longer serve you. Relationships that no longer align fall away on their own. Roles you once forced yourself to maintain become uncomfortable. Habits you used to soothe yourself suddenly lose their effect. You look at the people around you and feel they can no longer reach you in the old way. You hear yourself saying familiar things, but they no longer feel like your voice. When the old identity has completed its role, the field lets it fall. And this falling is so gentle that if you are not present, you will mistake it for failure. But failure does not create this kind of silence. Only transformation carries this type of stillness. You are being lifted out of lower vibrations, but this process never comes with fireworks. It comes through the quiet release of everything that no longer belongs to you. The quiet collapse is the field's subtle mechanism. It does not destroy to punish. It destroys to free. It does not pull you down. It removes chains that have become too old. When you enter this phase, you will notice something very clearly. Everything stops clinging to you. Judgments do not pierce you. Comparisons do not shake you. You begin to feel a distance between you and all the noise around you. That distance is the space where your new self is forming. That distance is where your new frequency begins to breathe. Do not try to hold on to what feels familiar when familiarity is the very thing holding you down. Do not try to make everything normal again when normal is the reason you stayed stuck for so long. Do not panic when you no longer recognize yourself. Not recognizing yourself is the first step to becoming a stronger version of who you are. The quiet collapse is always the starting point of power. Real power does not come from surface or noise. Real power comes from the depth where you are willing to sit in your own darkness without running away. When you no longer try to escape the emptiness, you begin to hear the signal of the field. When you no longer try to restore the old self, you will see the new self standing right behind the fog. And when you accept this silent phase without resistance, you will realize you have never become weaker. You are preparing to enter a kind of power the old self could not carry. The quiet collapse does not come to destroy you. It comes to hand you the level of power you are about to be ready for. This is the real beginning of the entire journey. The silence is not an ending, it is a door. And when you walk through it, every layer of new strength will begin to open in a way nothing can stop. The awakening of the observer does not appear when you sit in silence or when you try to seek peace. It appears in the moment you realize that your reaction no longer matches who you used to be. You watch a familiar situation unfold, but instead of jumping in, arguing, defending, explaining, or trying to fix everything like before, you pause, a pause so light, so delicate, yet enough for you to see the entire movement inside yourself. This is the moment the observer opens its eyes. No noise, no overwhelm, no declaration, just a moment where you stand apart from yourself and clearly see every movement within your inner world. You begin to see what you once only sensed vaguely. Anger rises, but you do not become it. Sadness washes over you, but it does not drown you. Hurt appears, but you do not melt into it like before. You are no longer pulled into automatic reactions. You stand outside all these movements as if you are watching a stream flowing beneath your feet. When the observer awakens, you no longer mistake your emotions for your essence. Emotions are waves, and you are the lake. Waves come and go, but the lake keeps its nature of stillness. This is the first shift that makes you internally untouchable. When you stand in the role of the reactor, anyone or anything can control you. A single sentence, a gesture, a look can pull you out of yourself. But when you step into the role of the observer, control returns to the place it belongs. Inside you, no one can touch your core anymore. The special point of this phase is that you begin to clearly see the difference between reaction and awareness. In the past, everything came so fast that you believed emotion was truth. But when the observer appears, you see that behind every emotion there is always a space. That space gives you time to see, to understand, to choose. When others raise their voice, you no longer shrink back automatically. When someone insults you, you no longer ignite from within. When life throws challenging situations at you, you no longer sway. You see everything, you notice everything, but you do not let anything pull you out of your position. This is the power of awareness, a type of power no one can take from you. The observer is not a new part of you. It is the part you have always had, but you lived so deeply inside your reactions that you could not see it. When this part awakens, you realize something important. You do not need to control others. You only need to control yourself. And when you do that, others naturally adjust to your frequency. This is a very subtle kind of power. It does not impose, yet it makes others pause and pay attention to your energy. The observer turns you into the keeper of the rhythm of the space. When you are calm, the space around you becomes orderly. When you are clear, people automatically feel the need to be mindful. When you are silent, they feel as if you know more than you say. This is how high frequency influences lower frequency. No effort, no proving, only presence. You will find yourself becoming clearer in a very natural way. The mind no longer runs wild when facing challenges. The heart is no longer dragged into meaningless battles. The body begins to register a level of peace you could not reach before. The observer also helps you see yourself as clearly as looking into a flat mirror. You see your impulsive habits, you see your old fears, you see beliefs that no longer fit, and more importantly, you no longer hate them. You simply observe them, and when you observe long enough, they fall away on their own. No force, no fixing, no fighting. Real change does not come from strain, it comes from awareness in each moment. When you are aware, the old parts dissolve naturally because they no longer have a place to cling to. The observer is also where you learn not to identify yourself with any role. You are no longer trapped in the story you tell about yourself. You are no longer imprisoned in the patterns others impose on you. You step out of all those layers and look at life from a completely different position. When you stand in this position, your inner authority rises in a way that cannot be hidden. All your interactions become sharper, slower, steadier. You become the person the space revolves around, not the person who must revolve around the emotions of others. And when you reach this layer, you realize the deepest truth. No one can control you when you see them more clearly than they see themselves. The observer gives you the ability to read energy, to read motives, to read the frequency behind behavior, not to judge, but to avoid being pulled into unconscious games. The awakening of the observer is the moment you step into true sovereignty. This sovereignty does not need words, it is felt. If you are beginning to feel a new calm forming inside you, if you notice yourself stepping back one step to see things more clearly, you can leave a small comment to mark this moment. You may use the line, "I have awakened the observer." This is the sign that your journey is moving in the right direction and a new layer of power is beginning to open right before your eyes. Frequency sovereignty begins the moment you realize that your life is not determined by circumstances or by the people around you, but by the vibration you emit in every moment. The world reacts to your frequency much faster than it reacts to your actions. A person may say the right things and do the right things, but if their inner frequency comes from fear, doubt, impatience, or lack, everything they touch becomes distorted and difficult to sustain. Frequency is the language the field prioritizes over any external expression. This is why some people only need to walk into a room for everything to shift, and why others, no matter how hard they try, keep falling into the same loops. It is not that they lack talent or opportunity, they only lack sovereignty over their own frequency. Frequency sovereignty is the ability to remain steady in the frequency you choose, no matter how the environment around you vibrates. And that is what separates someone who is barely surviving from someone who can make reality adjust to them. When you begin to understand that every thought you feed, every emotion you reinforce, every reaction you repeat is a signal sent into the field, you will clearly see your responsibility for the frequency you emit. The field does not respond to words. The field responds to the purity of your inner signal. A person may say they are confident, but if their vibration carries insecurity, the field hears insecurity. A person may say they want to move forward, but if they still carry the fear of loss, the field responds with situations that force them to continue validating that fear. When you lack frequency sovereignty, you will always be pulled by the energy of others. An angry person makes you angry. An anxious person makes you uneasy. A negative person drags you down. Not because they are stronger than you, but because you are not holding your own frequency, so their frequency becomes the default guiding force. When you begin building frequency sovereignty, you stop vibrating according to other people's reactions. You become the keeper of the rhythm, the one who determines the energy of the space instead of being shaped by it. Frequency sovereignty is not the ability to stay positive all the time. Positivity is not power. Power comes from stability. A stable frequency does not get pulled too high or pushed too low by external triggers. A stable person can walk into a chaotic room without losing their stillness. A stable person can face someone's anger without losing clarity. A stable person can witness injustice without falling into the victim role. Frequency sovereignty is the ability to reside in your core energy, regardless of the level at which the environment vibrates. When you hold frequency sovereignty, you will notice very clear changes. Old situations no longer trigger you in old ways. People who once hurt you easily no longer have that ability. Arguments that once drained you no longer pull you in. Not because you have become colder or indifferent. On the contrary, you have become brighter, clearer, and deeper. You do not react because you are standing at a higher position. Everyone carries a personal field, and that field always overlaps with the shared field of the space. A person without frequency sovereignty is pulled by the shared field. A person with frequency sovereignty contributes to shaping the shared field. This is why some people make a space lighter, brighter, and more orderly simply by entering. And it is also why others make everything tense just by showing up. Frequency never lies. It reflects the degree of your inner sovereignty. And the most important truth is that frequency sovereignty does not come from surface control. You cannot pretend to be calm to make your frequency calm. You cannot force yourself to think positive to make your vibration rise. Frequency sovereignty comes from building a new inner operating system where every reaction is replaced by observation, every fear is looked at rather than avoided, every old belief is questioned rather than kept out of habit. When you choose your thoughts, instead of letting thoughts operate on their own, You are reclaiming the navigation of your frequency. When you choose to respond instead of react, you elevate your frequency to a more stable level. When you allow emotions to flow through instead of suppressing or amplifying them, you clear your inner field so your signal becomes purer. Frequency sovereignty is the process where you are no longer affected by the volume of others, but only tuned by your own clarity. As you go deeper into this process, you will find that you can create a very natural ripple effect. A conversation becomes lighter when you are present. A space becomes clearer when you enter. Someone losing control can calm down simply from your presence, not because you do anything special, but because you are a stable signal transmitter. Your frequency becomes an anchor for those who cannot hold theirs. This is a level of power no one can take from you, and this is also why people with frequency sovereignty are always respected without needing to ask for respect. When you live in your true frequency, what does not match will separate on its own. What aligns will find its way to you. No forcing, no chasing, no proving. Frequency sovereignty does not make you rigid, it makes you free. Free from noise, free from the inconsistency of others, free from their emotional cycles, free from choices made out of fear. This is the deepest nature of inner power. When you hold your frequency, you hold your life. And when you hold your life, everything in the field begins to fall into place naturally. The presence that bends reality appears when you walk into a space, and the rhythm of that space adjusts itself to you without a gesture or a word. This is not domination, nor is it a type of power built on fear or physical advantage. It is a deeper, more refined form of energy, the kind that makes others unconsciously adjust their body, their voice, their pace, and even their thoughts when standing before you. This shift does not come from your desire to control them, but from the fact that you enter the space with an inner structure so strong that everything around you must find its place again. Presence is not created by the ego, but by coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are aligned, your frequency becomes sharp, like a gravitational point, and like gravity, it pulls everything into its own order. What allows you to bend reality is not the strength of your words, but the density of the energy you carry. A person lacking presence often creates a field of distortion. They walk in and immediately dissolve into the chaos of the room. They are led by the volume of others, adjusted by the pace of others, pulled by the emotions of others. But a person with presence is the opposite. They enter, and they are not still in tension, but still in fullness. That stillness slows the room. People speaking loudly lower their voices. People rushing begin to move more slowly. People scattered in attention start to focus. Presence bends reality because it is the signal of a nervous system that has learned to remain steady through every movement. When you stand steady within yourself, you become the still point of the space. Others naturally respond to that still point. Humans are programmed to seek stability, and when they meet someone who is truly stable, they adjust. This is why great leaders can calm a crowd just by appearing. And it is also why some people can instantly soften a situation that is about to explode. Not because they are more talented, but because their field of presence is stronger than the fields colliding around them. Presence is built from three elements: stillness in the body, clarity in the mind, and purity in the frequency. A still body means you do not react unconsciously. You are not pulled by external movements. You are not tensing up, and you are not shrinking down. A still body sends neither the signal of defense nor the signal of attack. It simply stands as a landmark. When your body is still, others feel safe, but at the same time feel the need to adjust their attitude in your presence. A clear mind means you are not distracted by internal noise. People lacking presence are often not in the room. They are drifting in their thoughts. This is what makes them fade. But a clear mind gives you the ability to feel the entire space, to sense the rhythm of each person, to recognize their motives and states within seconds. A clear mind also gives you the ability to respond rather than react, and that is what allows others to feel both safety and authority from your presence. Finally, the pure frequency is the element that bends reality. A pure frequency means you are not carrying the distortions of old ego layers, not carrying the warping effect of fear, not carrying the imprint of the need to prove yourself. When you enter a space with a pure frequency, you are not competing with anyone, and no one can compete with you. You simply stand in your position, and because you stand so firmly, the space must adjust. A strong presence is not one that makes others afraid, but one that makes others adjust themselves without knowing why. You do not need to announce that you are here. They know. You do not need to request respect. They give it. You do not need to try to shine. The clarity of your frequency does that for you. When your presence is strong enough, everything around you begins to function more smoothly. People who once treated you disrespectfully suddenly change their tone. Situations that used to press on you now feel as if they are flowing. Conversations that once felt competitive now become natural currents, not because the world has changed, but because your field is bending reality toward greater clarity, lightness, and order. The interesting thing is that presence can never be forced. You cannot create presence by pretending to be calm or by moving slowly on purpose. Presence is not in technique, it is in the level of awareness you carry. When your frequency is high and steady, your body, your voice, your eyes, and your behavior adjust naturally to that level. Someone who is trying to be strong emits tension. Someone who is truly stable emits fullness. That fullness is what makes others adjust. When you live in your true frequency, your presence becomes a natural force. No pushing, no proving, no exaggeration. The force comes from the fact that you have created more space inside yourself. And when the inside becomes spacious, the outside always restructures itself to match. The presence that bends reality does not come from willpower. It comes from full presence. When you are truly in the moment, you become the center of the space without trying. And from that position, you begin to see that reality is not something you must control. It is something that adjusts itself before a person who has adjusted themselves. When you reach this layer, you see that your power does not lie in your voice, but in your presence, not in action, but in stillness, not in effort, but in the purity of your frequency. This is the layer where reality begins to bend around you because you have become the gravitational point of your own life. The aura of still force appears when you no longer need to use effort to prove anything. You do not need to raise your voice to be heard. You do not need to display yourself to be seen. You do not need to argue to be acknowledged. Your power does not lie in the intensity of your actions or the volume of your words, but in the density of the energy you carry. Still, force is not silence being suppressed, nor is it emotional restraint disguised as strength. Still force is the state in which you are no longer pulled by any external vibration because every vibration has already been processed internally. It is a form of power that makes no sound yet is felt unmistakably by others. When you enter still force, your body becomes light but weighted. Your mind becomes wide but not scattered. Your energy becomes deep but not chaotic. You do not take up space, but space adjusts itself around you. The aura of still force is not something you create, but something that reveals itself when you stop fighting yourself. And to understand this power, you must understand one principle. Anything with great mass does not shake. A large rock does not shake before the wind. A mountain does not shake before thunder. A deep river does not shake when light rain touches its surface. Stillness is the result of weight, not effort. Humans are the same. You shake when you are hollow. You are still when you are full. And you only become full when you no longer live off external validation. When you no longer try to make others like you, still force appears. When you no longer fear losing the image you constructed, still force appears. When you no longer hold on to relationships that no longer align, still force appears. When you no longer need to argue to prove you are right, still force appears. When you are no longer controlled by the emotions of others, still force appears. Still force is not something you try to create, but something that shows itself when the inner noise has been cleared. And this is why people with still force always feel powerful to others without anyone understanding why. It is not because they seem cold. It is not because they seem mysterious. It is not because they seem dominant. It is because their energy no longer leaks. They do not shake at criticism. They do not sway at compliments. They do not rush when opportunities appear. They do not panic when something is lost. This stability creates an energetic structure that others instinctively respect. Still force is also the foundation of inner sharpness. When you no longer lose energy reacting, you redirect all that energy into observation and awareness. Your awareness becomes so clear that you can see the motives, the direction, the inner state, and even the hidden fears of another person within a very brief moment. Not because you are better at analysis, but because your vision is no longer blurred by the noise inside yourself. People without still force always hear inner noise. The noise of fear, of lack, of the need to be recognized, of old roles. These noises prevent them from reading reality accurately. But when the noise settles, when the inner world becomes clear, still force allows you to see the whole landscape effortlessly. You clearly see who is truly confident and who is hiding insecurity. You clearly see who is telling the truth and who is performing. You clearly see who walks with you and who only stays as long as it benefits them. Still, force is not only an inner state, but an external aura. It makes you difficult to attack because you reveal no weak points. It makes you difficult to manipulate because you do not react in predictable ways. It makes you difficult to pull down because you do not play the emotional games others try to drag you into. A person with the aura of still force is never in a hurry. They do not need to be. They do not walk faster because others are walking fast. They do not raise their voice because others raise theirs. They do not follow the momentum of the crowd. They stand at the center of their own energy, and from there they regulate the rhythm of the space. When you touch still force, you step into what psychology calls a regulated nervous system. But from a quantum view, it is the state in which your field is so stable that weaker fields unconsciously synchronize with it, not because you force them, but because they feel safe in your stability. Still force is not coldness. It is weighted peace. It is the signal that you are no longer affected by what makes others sway. It is the sign that you have mastered the inner wind and therefore no longer fear the outer wind. When you dwell in still force, you begin to speak less, but each word carries greater weight. You act slower, but each action creates clearer impact. You appear less, but every appearance leaves a deeper imprint. Still force makes you impossible to overlook. Others cannot ignore you because you do not emit the signal of urgency. You emit the signal of someone who knows their place and does not need to hold it tightly. When you live in still force, you step into a form of power no one can compete with. No one can take your inner stillness, and no one can replicate it. They can only feel it and respond to it. This is why still force carries an aura. That aura does not come from the surface, but from the frequency you radiate when you stop shaking and begin to shine through the fullness of your being. The identity that cannot be manipulated is formed at the moment you realize that your life has been directed for far too long by signals that do not belong to you. From family expectations, societal judgments, unconscious comparisons, to the roles you wore just to be accepted, you did not realize that each of these layers took away a piece of your inner sovereignty. And when too many of these layers accumulate, you lose the ability to distinguish what is truly you and what you are programmed to become. What makes a person easily manipulated is not weakness, but the lack of awareness about the origins of their own reactions, decisions, and beliefs. When you do not know who you are, anyone can tell you who you should be. When you do not know what matters to you, anyone can tell you what should matter. When you are not standing in your true identity, everything outside becomes a force, pushing you to move in whatever direction others want. But once you begin to see this mechanism clearly, you immediately step out of the position of being controlled and step into the phase of reconstructing your identity. Not the identity the world gives you, but the identity you give yourself. The identity that cannot be manipulated is created through three processes: mental detoxification, restoration of core values, and establishing a new identity aligned with the frequency you choose. Mental detoxification is the phase where you recognize the beliefs that are not yours, the beliefs you inherited from others but unconsciously treated as truth, the beliefs that make you feel lacking, afraid of being wrong, eager to please, or hungry for approval. When you dare ask whether this belief truly belongs to you, you begin removing the invisible locks that have held you for so long. Restoring core values is returning to the things that once made you shine from within but were buried beneath the noise of life. When you were young, you knew exactly what felt right to you. But as you grew up, you learned to ignore your intuition to fit in with others. Restoring core values is listening to that inner call again and giving it space. Establishing a new identity is not creating a false persona to appear strong or untouchable. It is placing what you truly want to live, truly believe, and truly move toward at the center. When you know your core values, you no longer waver before the values of others. When you know where you are going, you no longer drift in the direction others push you. When you know who you are, you become undefinable by anyone. This is the foundation of the identity that cannot be manipulated. A strong identity is not built from surface affirmations, but from absolute honesty with yourself. A person who cannot be manipulated is someone who has learned to listen to their inner truth more strongly than the noise around them. They are not dazzled by praise, nor wounded by criticism. They are not pulled by the need to prove themselves, nor defeated by the fear of being misunderstood. They do not try to become someone else to be recognized, because they recognize themselves first. When you step into the identity that cannot be manipulated, you step into the deepest form of freedom. Freedom from emotional manipulation, freedom from the loops of fear of abandonment, freedom from the need to prove yourself, freedom from the pointless battles inside your mind, and most importantly, freedom from the constant effort to please others in exchange for the feeling of existence. The identity that cannot be manipulated is not a rebellious identity, it is a sovereign one. It does not demand you become cold or excessively independent. It only requires that you stand in your truth even when the world tries to pull you away from it. When you stand in your truth, all attempts to manipulate you lose their power. Others cannot use emotions to control you because you no longer react from old wounds. They cannot use guilt to bind you because you no longer operate from lack. They cannot use pressure to push you because you no longer repeat old patterns. An identity that cannot be manipulated forces others to adjust how they behave around you. They realize that the methods that work on others no longer work on you. They see that the strategies that once destabilized you no longer touch you. And it is precisely this loss of effect that makes them change their approach. Not because you asked, but because your inner structure requires it. This is the power of a matured identity. This power does not impose, yet it commands respect. This power makes no noise, yet it compels others to quiet down and listen. This power does not need arguments, yet it makes your viewpoint carry weight. And the most beautiful part of this entire process is that as you change your identity, you no longer attract people who want to control you. You begin attracting those who match your frequency. Those who do not want to dominate you but want to walk with you. Those who do not require you to shrink but make you feel more expansive. Those who do not demand you become a convenient version of yourself but want you to become the truest version. This is the point where your journey shifts into another layer. If you are still here, still reading, still sensing every layer of movement inside yourself, it means you have gone very deep into this process. If you are still walking with me on this journey, leave a gentle like and share so anyone going through the same space knows they are not alone. We are going far, and the identity that cannot be manipulated is only one of the first doors you are about to walk through. The journey ahead is deeper, brighter, and wider. Energetic detachment is not about withdrawing from the world or becoming indifferent to everything around you. It is the stage where you begin to understand that your energy is your most valuable asset, and anything that touches it leaves an imprint. People often believe they are exhausted because they work too much, because they lack time, because of pressure, or because of their environment. But the deeper reason lies in the way they allow their energy to leak into things that were never worthy of touching their essence. This leakage happens when you react too much, expect too much, cling too much, try to save too much, or try to hold on to things that no longer belong to you. Energetic detachment is the process of stopping the unconscious pouring of your energy into old scripts and beginning to retrieve your own life force from the places you once lost it. This is the layer of transformation that makes you stronger without needing to appear strong. It does not make you cold. It makes you clear. It does not make you distant. It makes you bright. It does not disconnect you. It connects you correctly to what truly aligns. When you step into energetic detachment, the first thing you notice is that you are no longer pulled into stories that are not yours. Others may be confused, angry, unstable, anxious, or disappointed. But their energy no longer pierces through your field or makes you sway. You feel them, but you do not merge with them. This is the difference between someone who is controlled and someone who has energetic sovereignty. A person who is controlled has no energetic boundaries, so they unconsciously absorb the emotions of others. A small comment can make them think for hours. A small attitude can change their rhythm. Someone's silence can make them doubt themselves. A person with energetic detachment does not operate this way. They see the emotions of others, but understand that those emotions belong to the other person. They do not try to explain, fix, or carry them. They hold their energy at the center, stable, clear, and from that center they observe events without merging with them. This is the difference between reaction and awareness. When you react, you give your energy away. When you are aware, you keep your energy within. Energetic detachment is not indifference to the world. It is respect for yourself. Respecting that your energy is not to be wasted. Respecting that you cannot heal anyone if your own energy is leaking. Respecting that every time you try to save someone from their emotions, you lose a piece of yourself. When you detach your energy, you begin to see the truth behind every interaction more clearly. You will notice who comes to you because they want to connect, and who comes because they want to consume your energy. You will see who truly listens and who only wants you to fill the emptiness inside them. You will recognize who loves you and who loves the version of you they can control. Energetic detachment offers a clarity that makes the masks of the world become transparent, not because you become suspicious, but because your awareness becomes too high to be fooled by surface layers. You see through voices, eyes, behaviors, and you see the real energy behind them. This is a subtle form of X-ray that emerges only when you are no longer absorbed into other people's stories. When you detach your energy, you also begin to see the workings of the ego more clearly. You will see how you once identified with roles that no longer fit. The role of the pleaser, the role of the rescuer, the role of the one responsible for everything, the role of the strong one who is never allowed to be weak. Energetic detachment helps you put those roles down. You no longer need any role to feel whole. You only need yourself. Something interesting happens when you no longer attach your energy to things that do not belong to you. You become easier to breathe. Emotional loops that once exhausted you begin to dissolve. Conflicts that once drained you become meaningless. Relationships built on emotional dependency can no longer hold you. You look at the things that once pulled you down and realize they can no longer touch you. This is not emotional numbness. This is having boundaries. A person with energetic boundaries does not need to act tough. They only need to be clear. And clarity always creates natural distance between you and what does not match your frequency. When you detach your energy, you also stop fighting what no longer belongs to you. You do not hold on to relationships that have reached their time. You do not try to fix stories you are no longer part of. You do not try to prove yourself to people who are incapable of seeing you. You let everything fall into its rightful place. This is when you begin reclaiming the parts of your energy you once gave to the wrong places. Your body feels lighter because you are no longer carrying the emotions of others. Your mind feels wider because you are no longer sustaining old narratives. Your heart feels warmer because you are no longer performing roles that do not fit. Energetic detachment creates an inner spaciousness, and that spaciousness allows your frequency to rise. The higher your frequency, the less you are pulled downward. And when you stand firmly in this vibration, you realize that your entire life you were never lacking strength, you were lacking boundaries. When boundaries appear, manipulation disappears. When energetic detachment appears, you become the observer, not the one swept into the current. When you no longer merge with everything, you begin to see everything more clearly than ever. This is the shift from a life being controlled to a life with sovereignty. And from this moment on, what belongs to you will find you without you holding on. and what does not belong to you will fall away without you pushing. This is the lightness of freedom you have waited a very long time to experience. Quantum silence is not the silence you normally see in daily life. It is not the silence of avoidance, not the silence of endurance, and not the silence of someone who feels weak. Quantum silence is the state in which you do not need to use your voice to create influence, because your frequency is already speaking for you. This is the kind of silence that makes others stop, think, adjust, or become more aware of their behavior. It is the kind of silence that shifts the rhythm of a conversation, slows down the outburst of the person before you, and opens a space for truth to emerge. When you step into quantum silence, you are not stepping away from the game. On the contrary, you are standing at the center of it, steady, clear, but not loud. And it is precisely this lack of noise that makes others adjust to your rhythm. Loud reactors always believe they are the ones in power, but in the world of energy and psychology, the one with the least internal noise is the one with the greatest influence. Quantum silence does not create dullness, it creates gravity. When you are silent the right way, your energy becomes dense, and that density makes others feel that you are observing them at a depth they are not used to. They do not hear you, but they feel you. And that feeling is strong enough to shift their internal state even before you say a word. Quantum silence begins with the ability to master your nervous system. When others are agitated, you do not shake. When others lose their composure, you do not get pulled in. When others want you to react, you create space instead. That space is the doorway through which new awareness emerges. When you pause and refuse to react, you cut the energetic supply that fuels the other person's momentum. An argument cannot exist if one side does not feed energy into it. A person seeking conflict cannot continue if you do not provide opposing vibration. Quantum silence is how you reclaim inner control without needing to be right or wrong. It is a conscious choice that you will not sacrifice your inner peace for the sake of winning a dialogue you do not need to win. Ordinary people go silent because they do not know what to say. Weak people go silent because they fear being hurt. But people who live in quantum silence stay silent only when they have a higher layer of awareness about what is happening. They do not stay silent because they lack voice. They stay silent because they see movements the other person cannot see. They see the fear beneath anger. They see the hurt beneath defensiveness. They see the lack beneath aggression. And because they see all of it, they no longer need words to respond. A sentence cannot calm a nervous system in agitation, but silence, filled with awareness, can slow it down. When you hold quantum silence, you force the other person to face themselves, because they can no longer use you as an outlet for their emotions or as a mirror for their inner chaos. You stand there, still, clear, and that stillness makes them see their own disorder. This is why most people fear true silence. Silence exposes the parts they try to hide with noise. But in quantum silence, you do not use silence as a weapon. You use it as a mirror that reflects truth. When you stop feeding energy into old scripts, the script dissolves. When you do not react to another person's fear, that fear loses its anchor. When you do not cooperate with old patterns, the pattern collapses. This is the power that makes quantum silence such a rare form of influence. In this state, you do not need to display intelligence, nor do you need to prove correctness. The other person sees the irrationality of their behavior because you no longer participate in their game. You do not shame them, but your presence makes them self-reflect. You do not criticize them, but your still energy makes them feel the need to adjust. Quantum silence is also the foundation of deep wisdom. When you are not obsessed with responding immediately, you open space for clarity to emerge. Most mistakes in communication do not come from lack of intelligence, but from lack of stillness. When you are silent, truly silent, you see the entire structure of the situation. You see motives, direction, possible outcomes, and the most optimal choices. This clarity only appears when you have enough inner space, and quantum silence is how that space is created. It is not the silence between two sentences. It is the silence between two layers of awareness. When you go deep into this layer of silence, You no longer feel the need to control everything. You understand that often your non-reaction is what allows reality to self-correct. You understand that clarity does not need to be said loudly, it only needs to be held firmly. You understand that responding is not always the elevation of frequency. Sometimes silence is the correct response, because it does not feed energy into something you do not want in your field. In quantum silence, you become the one who controls the rhythm of the space without doing anything. Everything adjusts to you because you do not adjust to anything. This is the layer of power that appears only when you have passed through the quiet collapse, the awakening of the observer, frequency, sovereignty, presence, still force, and the identity that cannot be manipulated. All the layers before this lead you to one realization. Silence is no longer an absence. It becomes a gravitational point. And from that point, you can bend the direction of a conversation, bend the rhythm of a room, bend the momentum of a situation simply by not reacting. This is silence with frequency, silence with weight, silence with power, silence that changes reality around you without requiring a single word. Field-based boundaries are unlike any boundaries you have ever been taught. They are not firm statements, not acts of resistance, and not bold declarations that you will not allow anyone to cross your limits. All of those forms of boundaries depend on behavior and usually work only on the surface. Field-based boundaries are something you do not need to speak, yet others feel them immediately. They are not built by words, but by frequency. They are not protected by arguments, but by the clarity of the energy you emit. And because of that, they are stronger, more durable, and impossible to challenge by anyone vibrating at a lower level. When you live fully in your field, you emit a very clear signal, a signal that your time has value, your energy has value, your presence has value. Others do not need you to list what you do not allow. They sense it the moment they enter your energetic space. A person with field-based boundaries never fears being used or disrespected because their frequency structure does not allow such things to occur in the first place. Their boundaries are not fences. They are like a thick, clean, stable layer of air that chaotic vibrations cannot penetrate. When you still rely on words to set boundaries, it means you have not truly stepped into your sovereignty. You need others to hear, understand, or accept you. But when your boundaries are based on field, you do not need to convince anyone. Those who do not share your vibration will naturally drift away. Those who do not align will naturally feel uncomfortable. Those with harmful intentions will reveal themselves without you having to expose them. Field-based boundaries operate through natural elimination. When your frequency is stable, unstable people cannot attach to you. When you no longer sway according to the energy of others, those who still sway cannot keep you in their story. When you are clear about what you allow and do not allow, not through speech but through energy, others must adjust or withdraw. This is the most subtle yet most powerful form of boundary. It does not make you rigid. It makes you clear. It does not make you closed. It makes you luminous. It does not create unreasonable distance. It creates healthy space. When you have field-based boundaries, you begin to see things that once exhausted you disappear on their own. Negative conversations no longer find you. Emotionally manipulative people can no longer drag you into old patterns. Exhausting situations no longer repeat. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed frequencies, and the world is forced to respond accordingly. Field-based boundaries are not about you pushing against someone. They are about refusing to leave your center, even when someone tries to make you lose balance. When you stand firmly in your field, you no longer fall back into the pattern of pleasing others. You no longer feel the need to explain every decision. You no longer fear losing relationships that were built on lack of clarity. You no longer try to maintain peace by sacrificing yourself, because you understand that someone else's peace is not your responsibility. Your energetic boundaries begin to reshape your life in a very natural way. Those who truly respect you come closer. Those who do not value you drift away. Authentic relationships deepen, distorted relationships dissolve. This is the natural filtering process of the field. The field never keeps what does not match your frequency. When you raise your frequency, everything else must either rise with you or fall away. There are no exceptions. The most important truth about field-based boundaries is that you do not need to act cold or strong in the conventional sense. Your power does not lie in refusal. It lies in no longer lowering yourself just to keep peace. You no longer agree to things that go against your core values. You no longer stay in relationships that make you shrink. You no longer participate in conversations that lower your frequency. You no longer live according to the expectations of anyone except the brightest version of yourself. When you begin living this way, you become inaccessible to those who are not deep enough, impossible to exploit by those who are not genuine, and unreadable to those who are not clear. This is not you building walls. This is you becoming a space that misaligned energies cannot enter. Field-based boundaries teach you an essential truth. You do not need to force anyone out of your life. You only need to return to your true frequency, and the rest, the field handles. Those who match you will feel comfortable around you. Those who do not will feel uneasy. Those who are real will expand. Those who are false will contract. This is a self-regulating energetic ecosystem. When boundaries are built through the field, you do not just protect yourself from low energy. You elevate your life to a level where low energy cannot exist. And when you live at that level, every step you take, every interaction you touch becomes lighter, cleaner, and more authentic. This boundary is not to oppose anyone, but to allow you to live fully in the place where you truly belong. The timeline shift does not occur when you change circumstances, change jobs, change relationships, or move into a new environment. It happens in an almost invisible moment when the structure of your perception rotates slightly in another direction. A shift so small that no one else can see it, yet strong enough for your entire reality to begin rearranging itself. A timeline is not a straight line. It is a collection of countless trajectories that exist simultaneously. You do not jump into a new timeline through action, but through frequency. And when the frequency changes, everything attached to the old frequency can no longer hold you. A timeline shift does not come from determination. It comes from the purity of the signal within you. When you no longer make the old choices, no longer react according to the old patterns, no longer repeat the old emotional loops, you are no longer in the old timeline, even if you are still in the same physical space. The timeline shift is the gentle shedding of what used to be familiar. You look at the people you once resonated with and realize you no longer match them, not because you are better, but because you are different. You look at environments that once made you comfortable and sense their tightness. You look at habits that once helped you cope and realize they no longer fit your current frequency. This is the moment the timeline is shifting. It does not announce itself. It does not warn you. It simply separates you from what no longer resonates and brings you closer to what does. A timeline shift becomes most obvious when you begin noticing a slight difference in the way you respond to life. A sentence that once hurt now passes through you like wind. A situation that once made you anxious now feels like something you simply observe with unexplained calm. An opportunity that once made you impatient is now seen with clarity and discernment. This is not effort. This is you having left the vibration of the old self. The rotation of timelines also reveals itself in the way you receive information from the field. Subtle intuitions become clearer, soft signals from the environment become easier to read. Deep sensations in the body become unmistakable guidance. A new timeline always sends signals before physical reality catches up. And when you are sensitive enough to perceive those signals, you have already stepped one foot into another timeline. A key sign of a timeline shift is the temporary disconnection from your old self. You feel as if you are no longer who you were last week or last month. You look at the decisions you once made and see they no longer align with your current logic. You look at emotions you once believed were true and realize they belong to a lower state of awareness. You look at goals you once pursued with everything you had and see they no longer represent you. This moment often confuses people because they do not realize that disorientation is the strongest evidence that the timeline is changing. When the old timeline no longer has the structure to hold you and the new one has not fully formed, you stand between two spaces, a spacious middle ground with a very distinct energy. This is the reconstruction zone. In this in-between space, you cannot go back, no matter how hard you try. Old patterns stop working, Old exits no longer open. People who once felt familiar no longer feel safe. Decisions that once felt urgent now feel empty. The timeline shift forces you forward even when you do not yet know where you are going. It pulls you into a movement that cannot be reversed. You become too big for the old space and too new for the next one. This is when you begin forming the identity of the new timeline. A new timeline gives you nothing different if you are still operating with the old mind. This is why many people think they are stuck, when in reality, they are trying to bring an old version of themselves into a timeline that no longer fits it. A timeline shift requires only one thing: removal of beliefs that no longer match, removal of relationships that exist only out of habit, removal of choices that lower your vibration, removal of stories you once told yourself, removal of older versions of you that have completed their role. Each thing you remove creates space, and that space is the doorway to the new timeline. A timeline does not open when you hold tightly to what is old. It opens when you allow your energy to become light enough to cross into another layer of reality. Another sign of a timeline shift is that everything begins to flow more easily, not because the world has suddenly become kinder to you, but because you have left the layer of reality with high resistance. In the new timeline, you begin meeting entirely different people. You receive opportunities you previously could not touch. You notice deeper parts of yourself activating. You are no longer pulled by fear, but guided by clarity. You no longer choose from lack, but from fullness. You no longer act from reaction, but from the frequency of your new identity. A new timeline always feels like you are moving in the right direction even before you can see the destination. Not because you know everything, but because you no longer vibrate with fear. The timeline shift is the transition from living by reaction to living by frequency, from living to survive to living to expand, from living in the old story to living in the version the field has been calling you toward for a long time. And once you pass this point, you can never live the old way again. Not because you are forbidden to, but because you have become someone else. Someone aligned with the new timeline. Someone designed to operate at a higher level of awareness. Someone the old life can no longer hold. This is the nature of the timeline shift. There is no sound, no fireworks, but a transformation so deep that reality is forced to restructure itself around you. When you rotate timelines, you do not follow reality. Reality follows you. The quantum aura of inevitability is not surface confidence, nor is it the pride created by the ego. It is the state in which you enter a space and others sense that what you are moving toward is almost certain to happen, not because you aggressively pursue it, but because your energy carries the density of something already decided in the field. Inevitability is not blind belief that you will achieve everything. It is the inner agreement between you and the field that the path you walk is aligned with a trajectory larger than yourself. And from this point on, nothing is based on force, but on natural synchronization. The quantum aura of inevitability appears when you no longer live by doubt or hope, but by the understanding that you have become the person capable of bringing what you want into reality. This is not you believing something will happen. This is you knowing it because your frequency has already matched the outcome. In quantum mechanics, all possibilities exist as probabilities, but when an observing system becomes stable and consistent, it increases the probability of one possibility so much that it nearly becomes the only path the system can fall into. That is inevitability. Not because fate has been predetermined, but because the stability of your frequency makes one outcome unavoidable. This is also how your aura begins to bend situations, because the physical world always responds to the field. Those without inevitability live in two extremes. Either they try to control everything by willpower, or they surrender to circumstances because they lack belief. Both states distort their frequency and produce distorted outcomes. But a person who steps into the quantum aura of inevitability needs neither control nor surrender. They stand in clarity. They know who they are, where they are going, and that there is no need to rush anything into existence. When you live in this clarity, you emit a very specific signal, a signal that you are not wishing, a signal that you are not waiting, a signal that you are not doubting, And these three signals make others feel that you are operating along a predetermined trajectory. To them, you carry the presence of someone who will succeed, not because you boast about your goals, but because you no longer vibrate with fear of failure. To them, you carry the presence of someone whose words will become reality, not because you impose them, but because you no longer rely on proof. To them, you carry the presence of someone who can go further than anyone in the room, not because you act strong, but because you are no longer pulled down by small doubts. The quantum aura of inevitability is the aura of someone who has eliminated inner conflict. No part of you fights what you want. No hidden belief sabotages you. No fear pulls you backward. When the inner world holds no war, the outer world becomes orderly, and your aura carries that order like an invisible field that calms every chaotic vibration around you. Inevitability is also the state in which you are not shaken by time. Humans often lose energy when they believe what they want is arriving too slowly, but a person with inevitability never thinks slow. They think differently. If it has not arrived, it means the field is arranging. If the path is not open, it means a straighter one is being prepared. They do not doubt the process because they understand that the delay of physical reality is not the delay of the field. And this freedom from the pressure of time makes them incredibly magnetic to others. No one is drawn to impatience. No one is inspired by insecurity. But everyone is unconsciously drawn to someone who lives with peaceful certainty. When you enter a room with the frequency of inevitability, you do not declare that you will succeed. You do not try to appear significant. You do not need to make an impression. But no one can overlook you, because you emit the signal of someone who has decided. You are no longer someone searching for the path. You are someone already on it. You are no longer someone trying. You are someone becoming. You are no longer someone waiting for opportunities. You are someone who makes opportunities appear. The field responds powerfully to this type of person. You begin meeting the right people at the right time, in the right way. Doors open without you pushing. Situations slide toward you naturally. Not because the world favors you, but because you have moved to the timeline where what you want is no longer a small probability. It is a near certainty. The most important truth about the quantum aura of inevitability is that it is not arrogance. It is deep humility. When you understand that you have become the person capable of letting reality open the path, you do not need to boast. When you understand that you are living through the synchronization of the field, you do not need to force others to follow you. When you understand that what you seek is being shaped beneath a physical layer of reality, you do not need impatience. You only need to hold the frequency. Inevitability is the state of someone who knows they cannot be stopped because they no longer fight the old way. They do not confront the world, they align with it. They do not break down gates. The gates open. They do not compete. Frequency selects their position, and they do not need to prove themselves. Reality proves them. This aura is difficult to describe in language because it does not come from the mind. It comes from awareness. But when you step into it, you feel the shift in your rhythm. You feel the certainty without reason. You feel the stability no one can shake. This is the clearest sign that you have entered the layer of inevitability. And from this layer onward, your life is no longer guided by chance. It is guided by synchronization with the field. And the field always brings you exactly where you are meant to be, in a way nothing can interfere with. The untouchable state is not the wall you build to avoid being hurt, nor is it the coldness people often mistake for strength. It is the layer of awareness where you no longer operate from fear, no longer operate from ego, no longer operate from the need to prove anything, but from the clarity of a self that has gone through enough cycles of collapse, observation, restructuring, and returning to itself. At this layer, you are not untouchable because you are stronger than others. You are untouchable because you no longer hand the power over your inner world to anything outside of you. No one can touch you, not because they lack strength, but because there are no vulnerable points left for them to hold on to. Those points have already been faced, healed, released, and dissolved in the process of you becoming you. A person who cannot be touched is not someone who cannot feel. On the contrary, they feel deeply, but they do not allow any emotion to define their nature. They do not let sadness pull them down. Do not let disappointment break them. Do not let criticism shake them. Do not let validation make them arrogant. They feel but are not controlled. They love but are not dependent. They give but do not lose themselves. They stand in a state of complete freedom with the world because they have become free from the limitations inside themselves. Untouchability is formed through every layer of transformation you have moved through. The silent breakdown helps you step out of the old self. The observer helps you detach from unconscious reactions. Frequency sovereignty helps you hold your vibration. Presence reshapes the space around you without effort. Still, force makes you a gravity point that the world adjusts to. The unmanipulable identity frees you from all patterns of control. Energetic detachment keeps you from merging with the chaos of others. Quantum silence lets you bend situations without words. Field-based boundaries protect the clarity of your energy. The timeline shift removes you from the old trajectory. Quantum inevitability forces reality to open the path for you. All these layers converge into the formation of an untouchable self. When you stand in this state, you no longer chase anything because everything meant for you finds you. You do not need to argue to be heard because your presence carries enough weight. You do not need to defend yourself because your energy sets the boundaries. You do not need to seek belonging because you already belong to yourself. You are no longer pulled into old loops because they no longer exist on your frequency. You are no longer afraid of losing anyone because whatever leaves was never aligned to begin with. You no longer fear the future because you operate at a level where reality opens according to the frequency you hold. The untouchable self is not the feeling of being above others. It is the feeling of no longer being dragged into battles that do not belong to you. No longer seeing yourself as the protagonist of what others do. No longer letting small fluctuations rob you of your peace. No longer losing your frequency over a single comment. No longer losing direction over a sudden event. You cannot be touched, not because you avoid life, but because you see everything from a vantage point too high for those things to destabilize you. You stand in the field layer where every choice comes from clarity and every action carries coherence. Others may try to touch you in ways that once hurt you, but you no longer respond as before. Not because you suppress anything, but because you have become someone else. You no longer fit the version they once thought they could control. You have gone so far that only those aligned with your frequency can reach your inner world. This is the deepest freedom a human can achieve. Freedom from parents, society, friends, fear, the past, and all outdated versions of yourself. When you operate in the untouchable state, you become someone the world naturally respects. Not because you demand respect, but because your field forces people to treat you correctly. Not because you need to prove your worth, but because your worth is too clear to deny. Not because you shut yourself off, but because your energy repels what is not aligned. This is the moment you realize that real strength does not lie in dominating the world, but in not letting the world dominate you. Not in becoming rigid, but in becoming spacious. Not in fighting, but in standing firm. Not in having power over others, but in having sovereignty over yourself. And from this layer onward, your life flows differently. Lighter, brighter, deeper, and truer to who you really are. You are no longer distracted by noise because your frequency has become too stable for noise to touch. You are no longer pulled toward the easy choices because your new self seeks what is worthy, not what is convenient. You no longer need to force yourself to become anyone else because you have returned to the one the field has always been calling you to become. This is the end of one cycle and the beginning of another, where you walk as someone who has become their own source of strength. Wishing you, the one who has been patient, the one who has journeyed this far, the one who has dared to face the truth of themselves, will carry your own light into every space you touch. Wishing you enter each day with peace in your body, clarity in your mind, and fullness in your heart. Wishing you hold your brightest frequency in all circumstances and become a warm but unwavering light for those destined to cross your path. And above all, wishing you not only understand the untouchable state, but live fully in it, because that is the greatest gift this journey leaves in your hands.